Karen,
Yes.
what's the number one question everyone has about life?
Why are we here? What's our purpose?
Yes, exactly.
Woo, I got it right.
what's the meaning or the purpose of life? Yes, nice job.
Thank you.
Well, today we get to talk with someone that believes she has the answer.
Wow.
But
Yay.
the question is, will you like that answer?
Oh.
Yeah, we're diving into
Now you're scaring me.
We're diving into 5 unpopular truths about the purpose of life and answer once and for all what the actual purpose of life might just be. Now strap on your seatbelts because this one's going to be a bumpy ride. My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
So we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something.
Anything.
That will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Welcome to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And the time has come to dive into the main topic of the episode. Dr. Toni Reilly is Australia's foremost internationally recognized past life and reincarnation specialist who trained with renowned psychiatrist Dr. Brian Weiss in New York. And she explored mediumship development at the prestigious Arthur Findlay College in the UK. She's got a diploma in metaphysics and a doctorate of divinity. And she comes to us to discuss the purpose of life and why we are actually here. Dr. Toni Reilly, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Karen and Will. I'm excited to talk about this.
Oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
I'm a little nervous now, Will. You got me thinking. I'm like, oh boy.
Well, that's my job. My job is to get you thinking, so it's perfect.
That's true. Not just about laundry.
I'd rather not think about laundry, actually. So
no, you make me think about it.
Oh, well.
And how I wish you would do some of the laundry. But that's another show.
Well, Dr. Toni Reilly, thanks for coming on the show today. So let's just put it all out there. We'll go back to you in a little bit, but I know I would be banging at the door asking the question, why are we here? What's our purpose?
The dumbed down version of the purpose, our purpose, in my 20 odd years of researching and working in these realms is that we are here to experience emotion and the other senses that a physical body allows. When we leave our body, which of course we all do at death, we go back to a space where there is no body and it's just energy. Therefore, there are no emotions and there are no physical feelings. There's no physical touch. There's no hearing. There's no sight. There's no sound. There's none of these magical things that we get to experience in a body. We don't have a mind either, so there's no thought even. So when we're here, we have all of those faculties at our disposal because of our body. So we ought to make use of them.
I need to stop you because if you're only listening to the show, you're not watching the video on YouTube, you are missing Karen's total look of aghastness.
There's no love?
Oh, well, actually, the feeling when you're there, at least when you visit there as a person, which we can facilitate, it does feel like it's all-encompassing love. It feels like that whole thing we've been sold, that there's nirvana and heaven, that beautiful, unconditional feeling or sensation. It does feel like that. Yeah.
Okay. So you just said a couple of things there that I've got to point out. First, we talked to a lot of people who say the same thing that you have said, that we are love. That's what we are. And when we move on to the next life, we experience who we truly are, which is actually complete embodiment of love. But you said something very important that I've got to come back to really quickly, because you said that you can facilitate others visiting the afterlife.
Yes.
I need to know how can you do that?
Well,
in a way that's legal and not permanent.
And does it take a lot of drugs?
That's so funny, because back in the day when everything for me started as past life regression, but in that space, people really are just communicating with their soul. So what transpired over time was people would go beyond the past life, or actually massive, important part of their past life therapy is when they die, is that's when we're truly talking to soul and we're going into that pure energy. So there's also a lot of work done on the in-between lives stage, but home, or where everything is completely unconditional, that's what I call home. And we still can facilitate that, and you take a visit there. I call it a check-in. So some people are allowed to check in. People have it sporadically, actually. If you ever hear people talking about their near-death experiences, that's when it's happening to them sporadically or out of their control. They didn't come along for a facilitated session. It's just happened. But we can facilitate all of these things, and it's always, always the most beautiful experience. And it's personalized. So I think whatever we're doing here, it's always for now, to make now better. So whatever each individual is doing here or needs to know or needs help with, needs some clarity around, needs some healing around, then they will get what they're given in that space, because it was planned before we came. So their soul knows exactly what to tell them, do for them, adjust their energies, whatever's needed for them.
That whole plan, right? We've spoken to people that have used quantum mechanics to talk about the moment of you doing something now also happened at the same time 3,000 years ago. It's amazingly interesting. Now, you studied with Dr. Brian Weiss, who super famous for writing the epitome of books on past life, reincarnation, many lives, many masters. And you mentioned past life regression, but you also mentioned in between life regression, which is what happens when would you say it was in heaven, that you go to heaven, you have them visit there, or the place we go when we
I
die?
think as far as defining the difference, I would say that the between phase is the plan to reincarnate. So it's a bit of both. It's a bit of the all-encompassing home and that space where we're planning to come here, or it's so different to planning, but in human terms, we need to hear it in that way and perceive it in that way. So that's the way I describe that in between phase, planning to incarnate. And this is where no doubt you've heard people talking about what goes on there, and old people have a review of the life they've led, or they meet with counsel. They meet their soul family. So that's because it's that place where our lives are being planned, or we can look at them from there in that space. But actually beyond, where we're talking about where it's absolutely all love, for want of a better word, and we're all purely enlightened, that I feel like is beyond. I just call it home.
I like that.
Yeah.
Home.
Well, that's what it is, right? In fact, we've talked to people who said that exact same thing. Hey, when can I come home again, right? So we've heard of the past life review and all that kind of stuff happens immediately after death. Now, it sounds like you're saying something different. Sounds like you're saying that happens after you've gone through the time and you're ready to come back in. So it bears a question. Do we die just to immediately reincarnate right away? Or is there time in between? Or do we get to choose?
I think it's a little bit difficult to give a cut and dry answer, because there's no time. The moment that we leave this body, it's timeless. There is no linear time. So working in this past life space and the reincarnation space, there are people who are back in our terms of linear time almost immediately. But and then maybe there's been a certain amount of time in our linear time frame that it takes them to come back. So there's no defined time frame. But certainly that review and the like that goes on, I truly feel like that's even for our humanness to try and understand why we're here. I think that's why we get access to it, and people can get some comfort while they're here, that yes, we come with these other souls, and we've got a soul family, other people who love us. We've got this guide energy. We need to know that here to help us not feel alone, I think, in life.
Sure.
So how do you know this to be true?
Well, no, you actually can't. So my answer is, when you have the experience yourself, there's no question that it's real. And I don't know any better way than to say that the experience trumps science or logic or philosophy. It trumps everything. So it really, I suppose, is something that's difficult to actually prove to someone who hasn't had an experience. So that's the answer. I don't know if there's an actual way to prove it outright.
You just can't, once you've experienced it, you just can't deny that it's
That's
real,
it.
that it's true.
That's it.
Oh.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
And like you say many times, Karen, even if it's not real, but it feels really good, what's the difference?
Right.
That's a lot of in the science world and all the, the researchers that went on to prove reincarnation, they often come back and talk about that past life regression isn't actually provable because we could imagine it, we could make it up. But if you do it, if you do past life regression and it's facilitated, you know that you did not imagine it. It's not like imagination. The scenes, the thoughts, the knowing, they drop in over your humanness. They drop in over your imagination. They're coming in. If a facilitator is saying to you, go to a certain point or a time, something's flicking immediately in your awareness at that time, your human awareness, of course, for what happened in that past life. So when they talk like that, it makes me think, you've never had a past life. Yeah, you've researched. Fantastic, brilliant, but you've never had one. And it's something that I found a lot with a lot of people that work in this realm. So that's why I say experience trumps science.
Can everyone have a past life regression? Does it work for everyone, for lack of a better word?
Yes. That's the short answer. And if there's any resistance, it will be, personally in my practice, it's almost happens every single time, for no matter how skeptical the person is even. But maybe with facilitators who are new at it, then maybe for them, the trick is only that you need to get that person to give up control. So they just need to relax. They need to give up control and relax, because I think the moment you're trying to control what's happening, which is like, oh, I want to see a past life, there's too much thought in there and humanness, I suppose. But you are still very aware as a person when you are doing past life regression. But just giving up control is, or that little bit of control is the only thing that would, I'm going to say, hinder it, because it will never stop it. It's achievable no matter what, because we're from there. We're from there. We've been there. So it's accessible.
That's probably our biggest worry, I guess, is we go into a past life regression and suddenly it's like, oh crap, nothing's coming now.
See, that's thinking.
Or you think I'm just making this up.
It's like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. You're right. But I guess you have to really go into a deep hypnosis in order to relinquish the thinking part. That's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people do past life regressions. I guess they can do them. You can do them virtually. But is it better to be in person, or does it make a difference?
From a therapeutic perspective, or from terms of someone being able to relax enough, it works as well online, on Zoom, on the phone, as it does in person. So yeah, you can access it from anywhere. But I guess in person's got a bit of a different vibe to it, just because you're sitting there together. But as far as the efficiency of it, it works just as well virtually.
I assume you just have to make sure you're someplace where you're not going to be disturbed, or because that would be where my mind's going. Oh my God, is my kid going to walk through the door in a second?
Dogs start barking.
Right.
Well, you know what's interesting? Even if your kid walked in or the dog started barking, the first thing is when you're in there, then you still might hear the dog barking, but not usually. But it's kind of at a distance from what's going on in here. But if your kid walked in and interrupted you, it would be really quite simple as, once they go, you'd be like, close your eyes again. Oh, I would be, or the facilitator, close your eyes again, and you go back in again. So it's really, it's not rocket science. It's really, it's just amazing, really.
Says the doctor.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, it's easy.
Right. This is fascinating, but I want to get back to the topic that we started talking about, which is the purpose of life, the meaning of life. And you mentioned that that experiencing emotions is the reason why we're here. But you also, in our pre-interview information that we exchanged, you mentioned that grief was one of the most important ones to experience. Why would that be?
I think in the cycle of life, obviously we have birth and death, which is our start and end to each incarnation. But the middle, at the point where a person experiences grief, and grief is something that could set off from various things for each individual. But I suppose it's most often associated with the loss of someone to death. But there are so many more things: marriage breakups, relationship breakups. For some people, it's the loss of a pet. But one way or another, at some stage in each person's life, they will experience grief, which is this uncontrollable sadness, anger, depression, the whole gamut of what the grieving process entails. And you do not get to control it. You don't get to control it. You can't help how you feel. And I guess that's the epitome of grief, is that you cannot make it go away, and it lasts for as long as it lasts. But when we come through the other side of grief, and we do, we're different. It's not that we'll ever have forgotten our person, but we are a vastly different individual after that, in that mostly, if I also would dumb it down, we're more compassionate. We get at that stage that people do not get to control the feelings of grief, so depression and things like that. Do you know, before that, people are like, oh, if they've never felt depressed or really sad, they're like, just get over it. But when you feel it and you have no control, you know then that people are not making this stuff up. So it makes you a much more empathetic individual. So that's what changes. It changes us for the better, I suppose, makes us just more tolerant of others, more compassionate, more empathetic.
Sure. Right. I would assume the same thing could be said about trauma,
Yes.
right? Going through some sort of trauma, it would actually serve the same purpose. Is trauma and grief the same, or are they two different?
I think that it would be fair to say that grief is the process of processing trauma or working through trauma. So yes, they're entirely, knitted together. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we have to take a break, but we have just barely scratched the surface of this conversation. When we come back, I know we've touched on a couple of the unpopular truths behind the meaning of life, but when we come back, we're going to dive into the remaining unpopular truths about the purpose and meaning of life. Stay with us. You don't want to miss this one. Welcome back to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. We're talking to Dr. Toni Reilly, who is a past life regression therapist, as well as many, many other things. And she's explaining to us the meaning of life. At long last, we get to understand why we are here.
Finally.
Now, before we left, we talked a lot about past life regression, and we talked about life in betweens and being able to facilitate visits there. And boy, are we going to talk after this for sure. But we also touched on a couple of the unpopular truths about the purpose of life. And she mentioned, Dr. Toni Reilly mentioned, that we are here to experience emotions, including and especially, one would say, grief. Now, Doc, what else is there that people don't want to hear about the meaning of life?
Okay. Well, it's a big claim, isn't it? Oh, I know the meaning of life.
It sure is, yeah.
So, but I think a few of the things that I heard particularly when I first started in this, there was there has been this whole new age movement, which in some ways had its own take on these concepts. But one of them is that we have a life path, which numerology depicts, astrology depicts, and it's true, we do. But what people like to do is excuse or make an excuse when life goes to shit, and it does. Nobody wants to feel in emotional turmoil, but we get there for whatever reason at stages of our lives. And then what people do is they come into victim mode and they're like, I went off path, must have done something wrong. But it's like, the more you feel like you're off path, the more you're exactly where you're meant to be. But nobody wants to believe that the shitty parts of life are part of the path, but they are. They're intrinsic to our path in life, or our mission I call it the mission in life. So that's one of the unpopular truths, is that you're never off path, ever. That's one thing. And
That's a big claim, that you're never off path. And I guess I guess it could be equal to people saying everything happens for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing that annoys people.
Yes.
How does that concept work with people having free will?
Oh, like
if there's already this plan and this path, you only think you have free will. And that's what it sounds like to me. Is that true?
yes. So free will is another thing I talk about. It's another one of the unpopular truths. People, they can't stand it when I say free will is a human concept. So we only have it here. It has no bearing on what we plan to do when we're here, because it's all planned to the nth degree before we come here. So when we think we had free will and we chose this and it was a great decision, or we chose that, it was a terrible decision, we beat ourselves up about it. It's not actually free will, except for, of course we made a choice while we're here. So yes, it feels like we've got free will here, but it's not going to change what the actual plan was. And really, we were only ever going to choose, or the outcome was only ever going to be what it was or what it ends up being. And so really, I say that to people to make them feel better. Some people, they feel worse because they feel like we have control. But it's like, actually, if you ease up and realize that, stop beating yourself up and having regret. It's pointless, but it's part of this emotional feeling that we're supposed to have. But really, if you start to think about, well, what if I had have chosen this? Things could have been better, but you go, well, I never was going to choose anything different to what I was, what happened, what I did choose. Stop being mean to yourself. You can start to make peace with the choices that you made and start to look at them a little deeper for why you made them and what transpired because of them. There's always good when you look for it as to why you didn't end up with that person, or but you did end up with this one. There's a deeper purpose and meaning behind all of it, and it's easy to look for it.
I want to dive a little deeper into that, because I want to try to understand it better. Is it like a science fiction time travel movie where people are trying to change the past, but no matter what decision they make, they end up in the same place? Or is it that every decision was exactly what you were going to do no matter what?
Yes. And I guess on that note, it also includes when you do question it. It's all part of what was meant to happen. So what was meant to go in your questioning. So it's really just all part of the mission and the plan.
So now, do you find that people can kind of use it as an excuse? You don't feel like working extra hard. I'm not going to do anything today, but hey, this was the plan.
See, Karen, I wasn't supposed to do the laundry.
I don't like the plan.
But then Karen's meant to feel that frustration, so that you didn't do
No, let's move on to another topic now.
But it's so simple. When we're talking about the washing, do people think it's such a big thing? But the purpose of life is the frustration that might be felt by, I'll say the kids. I'll go away from you guys. The kids didn't put the washing out, and now you're going to run late getting them to school because they didn't say they needed that jacket today. All of those things, they're emotional feelings that set off in us, and everyone's going to feel something from it that's playing out. So it's just so much simpler than people realize. The purpose of life, those emotional things that are going on in our existence, probably almost every moment that we're here.
Then what's the deal with empaths? Are they just like fast tracking and feeling all the emotions, or?
They have a role here. We all have a role here. But as an empath, which you would be, well, I certainly am, I think that there's a role that we are playing, or there's a role that we have to achieve, or that we are achieving, not have to, that we're achieving here. And I think the role of empaths, personally for them, it's going to be what's mine and what's theirs, because even with empaths, they can be escaping their own turmoil, I'm going to say, and be like, well, I'm picking up on everyone around me. Or they can be feeling like it's their turmoil when it is others around them that they're picking up on. So there's a personal thing for them to experience, which is discerning what's mine and what's theirs. And there's also, with an empathetic person, there'll be a a beautiful aspect to them because they make the most natural counselors. And when I say counselors, of course, they might be professional counselors, but most likely within their family unit, with their friends, with the people that they know, their colleagues, they're most likely this person that people goes to that can speak to someone or someone's going to listen to them. So the empath has many roles and experiences and something to give while they're here.
That sounds familiar to me.
Just a little bit.
Just a hair.
Just a touch.
All right. Well, are there more truths that are uncomfortable, or have we covered them all?
They're pretty much, you're never off path. No one else is ever off path. So a little side note of you're off path, when people feel like their relationship, I don't deny that people have hard times. I truly am not doing that. But often it's easier to blame that other person or feel like they did you wrong, and maybe they did. But people also default to they're off path, but they're not. So it's like no one else is off path. You're not off path. It's just for an experience. The free will thing is one of the big truths that people dislike, that it's really just a human part. And also the one other thing, karma. People perceive karma that there is also a human concept. Can I just say that? That's the baseline. Is also a human thing. It's part of why we're here. But people like to believe that the shitty stuff's happening to them now because they were bad in a past life. They've brought it with them. But really, it's actually just part of what's going on in your life now, part of the experience that you came to do. So those are the main unpopular truths that I've discovered.
How's that feel, Karen?
Feels pretty good, Will.
Yeah. Yes. Listen to past episodes. You'll know exactly
We've had some debates about karma.
what Karen believes about karma. So yes. All right. Well, moving on.
Well, just before we move on, I have a question.
Okay.
So you're supposed to learn or feel emotion. What about the bad guys? People that just come and they commit these horrible crimes. They don't really seem to regret them, and then they die. What are they learning or experiencing?
How to be shitty.
Yeah, I think I also think this concept that we're coming to learn is a little bit humanized as well. I feel like it's better to say that we're here for an experience, because those people who come, I know that we're going to the absolute worst of people. So, I mean, if we think about a serial killer, for example, so we'll go as far as we can go with the depths of bad. But when they come here and commit their crimes, what happens is the people that they affect is who it's for. It's for their experience. So imagine the family of the victims of this person. Imagine the turmoil that they go through, the grief, the guilt, the whatever turmoil that they go through is what is actually happening. It's rippling out to affect so many people. Of course, it's going to affect the people who investigate it. It affects so many people with those terrible travesties that go on. The actual person who's doing them, to be honest, I don't know that there is something for them to learn per se. It's more like they've come as this person who's going to be so hated by everyone they've affected. But they've come to make that ripple effect, to create this emotional experience for everyone who feels it from what they did.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
So why? Why do we have to grieve? Why do we have to go through these traumas in this life? Can't we just come down and hang out for a while and come back out?
Well, I guess that's what the ones that come without the feelings, which are very, very rare. Someone like a serial killer, for example. But no, that's yeah. But no, it's part of the experience too. I think you don't know. I think you don't know what it feels like to be truly calm and at peace until you've felt what it's like to not feel like that. So it's really just to experience the whole gamut of emotions that are possible.
Because we can't experience it in the afterlife.
we don't experience it in the afterlife. No.
So that's where we come here to in order to experience these emotions that we can't experience otherwise.
Yeah.
Whew.
And
Okay.
this is unique to Earth. I'm not so much into the Dolores Cannon out there stuff, but I can absolutely tell you that people who come for past life regression, they go elsewhere as well. So it hasn't been the focus of my work, but they do go elsewhere. And where they go elsewhere is not like Earth, as in it's a much different experience, and it's not harsh. Earth is the harsh place. This is, you know, they in religion, we were told about heaven and hell. Well, this is it here.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
I have heard that we're living on the hell planet. I have heard that before in prior interviews. So, okay. So I've got to ask you a question that I need to ask much more, or many more people that we interview. But do you ascribe to the theory that we are all one?
Yes. And when I say we're going home, when you experience that space, that's when there's everything but nothing. So it's where people get this concept that we're all one. You can feel it.
So then if that's the case, and I buy that, I believe that, that's my belief system. But then you're a past life regressionist, right? This is the perfect person to ask this. When you regress someone, could they be tapping into someone else's lives? I mean, since we're all one, don't we all just experience all the lives?
Can I say this? Maybe. And I hear people in other focuses within these realms talking about it's all happening at once. In my work, it was a little bit more structured in that we're doing past lives. So if you're remembering your past life, it's very human. You were there as a human in a past life, and there's a time frame and there's a generation that you're in. So from my perspective, when people are recalling their past lives, it's not all happening at once. It's in a timeline. Like we're here now in 2023, and they're going back to another time in humanity's history. So
yeah, it's easy to wrap your head around it if you put it on the timeline. I would think, yeah.
That's timeline.
So
once you go beyond, though, no time.
Right, which is not easy to wrap your head around.
No.
Well, you have written a best-selling book called Awake, the Purpose of Life and Why You Are Here. This is one of the reasons why we have you on the show today. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about the book. What prompted you to write it? What brought you to this entire category of modalities? Because it's a very specialized field.
Oh, gosh. I'm going to try and keep this short. Because I can ramble on about it. But briefly, I was a very, very mainstream person until this all came into my awareness in my mid-30s. So before that, mainstream person, married, 3 kids, working with computers, so programming and administration type stuff. But at that point, when I had an emotional turmoil, I left my marriage, was the catalyst. And I realized that there's intuition. And I became obsessed with finding out about, if I have this, why am I, in my 30s and I never knew? So that's what started. And as part of developing that intuition, the serendipity or synchronicity, as it would come to pass, is the lady who taught me to enhance my intuition. She told me to read Many Lives, Many Masters, Dr. Brian Weiss's book. And it absolutely changed me in that I never heard of past lives before, if I'm honest. And I'm like, I read the book and I thought, oh, then this is what I'm here to do. So it's like everything has changed almost overnight for me. And it took off. I cannot tell you the people that I met who came across my path, the people who came for past life regression. It was crazy. And it's like, this has to have been planned because there was no marketing or anything back then. It was just all happening. So, but as part of becoming aware of past lives and starting to work with people in that process and of trying to build my intuition, I was meditating and I realized that I was messed up. So it was a bit of a culmination of self-awareness was coming to me at pace. And I thought, I never knew I was messed up. And then it was like, you're so messed up. All this stuff was coming in every time I meditated. It was like, what's going on here? And I mean, I found it just entirely liberating, but it was hard. And because of that human aspect of awareness and self-awareness and who am I, culminating with there was this whole other space that we could access for our past lives or even beyond. That's why this work came together for me as using that space and that access to our soul to make now better, and realizing also that none of us get out of the human experience. We are coming here. This is all my research. What we're born with, we're coming here to do certain insecurities. We will not get out of it. Every single one of us, no matter who you are here, you're coming to do a certain insecurity, emotional bruises, I call them. And we're coming to experience certain things. So back to the book, that's what I tried to cover in my book. So I tried to show how our lives are planned and why they are so to have a certain emotional experience. So that's why I wrote about myself and or my life, which is it's pretty pleasant, can I say, compared to some people's childhood.
That's great.
So, and I'm sure some people read it and roll their eyes and be like, she didn't really cop it that hard. But I can tell you, when we feel grief over trauma or the loss of our cat, whatever it is, that feeling is the same, and it is all encompassing, and it's not nice. So, but to showcase that, I had to be really honest about some things I'd done in my life as well. One of the things I talk about is love at first sight, because it actually happened to me. And it's one of the things that people, if they're in a relationship already and the morals say you're not to be seeing anyone else, well, when that love at first sight comes in, no matter what you've been taught, it's coming and you cannot resist it. It's so extraordinary. If you guys have felt it, beautiful. But I don't think it's like grief. People can't comprehend it unless it's happened to them. The power in it. It's really special, actually. It's like, God, I hope everyone gets to have that. And it doesn't mean it lasts forever even, but it certainly comes in and it's extraordinary. But I wanted to talk about how those things happen and they defy morals, actually, because they're part of the plan. They defy morals. They defy how we thought things would end up for us as a person. And that's what I did in that Awake, the Purpose of Life and Why You Were Here. I tried to showcase all of these things.
You've opened up a whole other can of worms that we can't go down. So you actually created the Soul Life Coaching Program. And this is a program that helps people. Why don't you tell us what that is? It'll probably be a lot better than me trying to explain.
The Soul Life Coaching Program, that's the culmination of these 20 years of research and observations and my own, of course, experiences. This program that I developed, I call it a new psychology because that's what it is. But what we did is we absolutely take notice of that. We're a soul here. And so it's beyond clinical. It's well beyond clinical. We are always going for a more energetic approach. And because we know that the life is planned, whether people believe it or not, when you do this training, and it's also not rocket science, we can tell where a person's at. You can tell it by their date of birth, for goodness sake. It's really quite simple. And people are not necessarily at the stage in their path or on their mission to know everything. So part of being this soul life coach is knowing what to do with your person at the stage that they're at and not forcing. Because, you know, I digress slightly to say to someone that was meant to be, or this will turn out better than you think. That is not comforting in turmoil. It's not comforting at all. It's something that we have to arrive at ourselves. Part of why it all happens, that we arrive at that philosophical outlook of what's happened to us ourselves. But this soul life coach, it really is the most extraordinary support. If for people who want to help people, for people who are intuitive, they'll feel drawn to it rather than we have to sell it to them. But they can come along and learn it to be a really unique and effective therapist for now. You know, therapy sometimes is really just that someone needs to feel that they trust this person enough they can talk to them. It's really it's a beautiful modality. It's a beautiful thing to learn. It's a lovely thing for people to do. And of course, our main therapy is going to a past life or beyond, wherever they need to go.
And you do these NDE-like experiences that I'm just so entranced by. So we're going to talk after this for sure. If you are interested in the Soul Life Coaching Program or in the book that she wrote, Awake, The Purpose of Life and Why You Are Here, we're going to add direct links to those on our show notes. So all you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to the episode page, and you will find the links there directly. We're also going to add links to your website as well as your social media. So if you want to reach out to Dr. Reilly, this is the perfect opportunity for you to do so. Toni, thank you so much for coming on and sharing of your wisdom and your expertise with us. We've got a lot that we've got to think about after this one.
A whole lot. Yes.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming along on this journey of discovery with us. We'd love to continue our conversation with you on our website at skepticmetaphysician.com or on Facebook and Instagram under Skeptic Metaphysician Podcast. If you know someone who would benefit from hearing the messages we're sharing on the show, do them and us a favor and share the show with them. It will help get the word out about us, and it may just change someone's life for the better. And if you're listening to this on the radio and you missed something, well, not to worry. All of our shows, including this one, can be found at skepticmetaphysician.com, where you can also watch the videos or even send us an email or voicemail directly from the site. We absolutely love feedback and would appreciate hearing from you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have. That's all for now. We'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysicians. Until then, take care.